The air in the security control sector of Xylos Transit Station hung heavy with tension. Year 2375 by Earth's calendar, and the sprawling hub of interstellar commerce and diplomacy was experiencing an unusual inspection. General Cadet of the KRYLL Empire moved through the corridors with deliberate steps, his scaled body towering over most other species. His entourage of loyal KRYLL officers followed in disciplined formation, their armored forms creating an imposing procession that parted the crowds effortlessly. Cadet Ilara Vance stood at attention alongside her fellow officers in training. As the youngest human representative in the Young Officers Exchange Program, she knew all eyes would be on her performance. Her small stature compared to the other species in the security force made her stand out, though not in ways that particularly helped when facing scrutiny from someone like General Cadet. The general's reputation preceded him, a veteran warrior responsible for 3 successful campaigns against rebel factions, known for his unwavering belief in KRYLL's superiority and his exceptional combat prowess. His thick armored scales gleamed under the station's lights as he approached the young officer station. This is what passes for security personnel these days. Calethrac's voice rumbled, deep and dismissive. His yellow eyes narrowed as they swept over the formation. I see the Extended Galactic Alliance continues its charitable inclusion policies. The Xylosian station commander, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin, stepped forward. General, these cadets represent the finest young minds from their respective worlds. They're here as part of our— Spare me the diplomatic recitation, Calethrach interrupted. I'm here to assess security capabilities, not admire your diversity initiatives. The general stopped directly in front of Ilara, his massive form casting her in shadow. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with shoulders twice as broad as hers, he seemed to deliberately emphasize the physical disparity between them. Human, he said, the word dripping with disdain. Your species continues to confound me. So fragile, so small, yet somehow granted equal status in galactic affairs. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. Tell me, little one, what possible contribution could you make to station security? Your arms are like twigs. A KRYLL child could snap them without effort. Ilara maintained her composure, her eyes fixed forward as protocol demanded. With respect, General, effective security requires more than physical strength. Analysis, adaptation, and intelligence are equally important factors in intelligence. Calethrach interrupted with a harsh laugh that his entourage quickly echoed. Is that what humans tell themselves to feel better about their evolutionary shortcomings? That their soft, weak bodies house superior minds? The control room had gone silent. Even the usual background communication chatter seemed to have died down as all attention focused on the confrontation. Sir, Ilara continued, her voice steady despite the intimidation. The historical record suggests that dismissing any species based on physical attributes alone has proven to be a strategic error. Adaptation and cognitive flexibility have often. Calethrac's scales rippled with irritation. You dare lecture me on strategy? Me? A KRYLL battlemaster with 30 cycles of combat experience. His voice rose, echoing off the metal walls of the control center. No, sir, Ilara replied, choosing her words carefully. I merely suggest that diverse capabilities strengthen any security force. Each species brings unique perspectives and abilities that, when properly coordinated, create a more effective whole. Something in her measured response seemed to trigger something in Calethrach. Perhaps it was the lack of fear she displayed, or the implicit challenge to his worldview. Whatever the cause, the general's composure cracked. Impudent creature, he snarled, his arm moving in a blur of motion. The sound of scaled flesh striking human skin cracked through the control center like a whip. Calethrach had slapped Ilara across the face with enough force to send a normal human sprawling to the floor. But Ilara didn't fall. Her head snapped to the side from the impact, a red mark blooming instantly on her cheek. For a moment, Everyone in the room held their breath, expecting tears, a cry of pain, perhaps even unconsciousness given the strength of the KRYLL general. Instead, Alara's hand moved with startling speed. Her fingers found a precise point at the junction of Kael'Thrak's neck and shoulder, just beneath the edge of his scales, and pressed deeply. The effect was immediate and shocking. The towering general froze, his yellow eyes widening in surprise, then pain. His mouth opened in what began as a roar of outrage, but transformed into a strangled gasp. His knees buckled, massive body, suddenly unresponsive to his commands. What? What have you done? He managed through clenched teeth, voice tight with agony. His entourage stepped forward in alarm, hands moving to weapons. Neural pressure point manipulation, Alara said calmly, maintaining the precise position of her fingers. Every species has them, even those with armored exteriors like the KRYLL. This particular one is sending conflicting signals to your central nervous system, creating a feedback loop of pain without causing permanent damage. Kael'Thrak's breathing became labored. Sweat beaded on his scaled forehead as he struggled against the overwhelming sensation. His proud posture crumbled further, bringing him closer to eye level with the human he had just struck. "Release me." Immediately, he gasped, but the command carried none of its former authority. "3 things you should know about humans, General," Alara said, her voice calm but firm. "First, our historical experiences with predator species on Earth gave us extensive knowledge of pressure points and vulnerabilities. Second, all EDF personnel receive advanced training in xenophysiology and defensive techniques. And third," she leaned closer, "we're much stronger than we look." With a small adjustment of her fingers, the pain intensified. Kael'Thrak's legs gave way completely, dropping him to his knees before the cadet. "Please," he gasped, pride forgotten in the face of overwhelming pain. "Stop. I yield." 3 seconds. That was all it had taken to transform the mighty KRYLL general from imperious conqueror to a pleading suppliant. The control room remained frozen in shock. The KRYLL officers looked on in disbelief, their hierarchical worldview crumbling before their eyes as their revered leader knelt before a human half his size. Alara maintained the pressure for 1 more second before releasing her hold. She stepped back, resuming her formal posture as if nothing unusual had occurred. "You have my sincere apologies for the necessity of that demonstration, General," she said evenly. "I trust it serves as an adequate response to your inquiry about human contributions to security operations." Kael'Thrak struggled to his feet, his dignity in tatters, rage and confusion warring in his expression. His hand moved reflexively toward the ceremonial blade at his hip, but he stopped himself, sudden uncertainty clouding his features. For perhaps the first time in his military career, he found himself recalculating the threat assessment of a species he had long dismissed. The Xylosian station commander stepped forward, breaking the tense silence. "Perhaps we should continue this inspection at another time, General. I'm sure you'd like to. Regroup." The general straightened his posture with visible effort, his eyes never leaving Alara. "This isn't finished," he said, his voice a low rumble. But the threat carried a new undercurrent, caution, where before there had been only contempt. As he and his entourage departed, whispers erupted throughout the control center. Alara remained at attention, her expression revealing nothing of the turmoil she surely felt. She had defended herself appropriately against an unprovoked assault, but had also created an incident with diplomatic implications. What she couldn't know was that her actions had just changed the trajectory of interspecies relations in ways that would soon become apparent to all. Commander Eva Rostova of the Earth Defense Force paced the confines of her office on Xylos Station, her normally composed demeanor showing rare signs of agitation. Across from her desk, Cadet Alara Vance sat straight-backed, the red mark on her cheek now faded to a dull purple. "Do you have any idea of the diplomatic nightmare you've created?" Rostova asked, though her tone carried more resignation than anger. "The KRYLL are filing formal protests. Their embassy is demanding sanctions." And General Kael'thrak, she paused, a hint of reluctant admiration crossing her features, is apparently demanding a full investigation into human combat capabilities and potential biological weapons. I apologize for the complication, Commander, Elara replied evenly. But I acted within regulation parameters for self-defense. The general physically assaulted me in front of multiple witnesses. Rostova sighed, dropping into her chair. I know, and unofficially, I'm glad you stood your ground. But the KRYLL are a proud species with significant political influence. This incident won't simply disappear. The commander tapped a command into her desk console, bringing up a holographic display showing security footage of the incident. She replayed the moment of confrontation, studying it carefully. Where did you learn that particular technique? It's not standard EDF training. Elara hesitated before answering. My grandmother was a specialist in xenobiological defense tactics during first contact. She believed humans needed every possible advantage. She supplemented my education. Rostova nodded slowly. Well, your grandmother's lessons might have just complicated galactopolitics, but they also potentially saved your life. KRYLL are known to escalate physical confrontations. If you'd simply absorbed that blow, it might have encouraged worse. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. Rostova glanced at her console, her expression shifting from resignation to sharp attention. We'll have to continue this discussion later, Cadet. It seems we have a more immediate crisis. She activated the incoming transmission, and a holographic projection of a harried-looking Zorian officer appeared above her desk. Commander Rostova, urgent situation report. The reptilian officer began without preamble. Research vessel Wanderer has gone dark after sending a distress call. They reported being boarded by what they described as shadow ships at the Omega sector border. Last transmission indicated hostiles were searching for something specific in the cargo hold. Rostova's brow furrowed. Void Reavers, she said grimly. That's the current assessment, the Zorian confirmed. Alliance Command is assembling a rapid response team from available personnel at Xylos. Your expertise is requested, as are any EDF specialists currently stationed there. Elara remained silent, though her posture straightened almost imperceptibly at the mention of the infamous raiders. Void Reavers were the stuff of spacer nightmares. Pirates with technology that seemed to defy conventional understanding, capable of appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly, leaving devastation in their wake. After the transmission ended, Rostova turned to Elara with a calculated look. It seems the universe has a peculiar sense of timing. The response team will include representatives from all major Alliance species, including the KRYLL. Understanding dawned on Elara's face. General Kael'thrak. Exactly. He's the senior KRYLL military officer in this sector. Protocol dictates his involvement. Rostova studied the young cadet for a long moment. I should keep you as far from this operation as possible. It would be the politically prudent choice. But, Elara prompted, I've reviewed your technical qualifications. Your analysis of anomalous energy signatures during the Procyon incident was impressive, and the Void Reavers are known for employing technology that defies conventional countermeasures. She paused. I'm assigning you to the technical analysis team for this operation. Elara's eyes widened slightly. Commander, are you certain that's wise given recent events? Probably not, Rostova admitted with a grim smile. But I need the best minds available, politics be damned. Just try not to put any more alien generals on their knees, if you can help it. Meanwhile, in the KRYLL diplomatic quarters of Xylos Station, General Kael'thrak sat alone in his chambers, ignoring the concerned queries from his staff. His pride still stung from the public humiliation, but something else nagged at his tactical mind, something beyond the personal affront. He activated his private terminal, bypassing the official channels to access classified KRYLL intelligence files. His search parameters were specific: human defensive capabilities, neurological weapons, and historical combat analyses. The results made for unsettling reading. There were scattered reports from previous encounters, Incidents where seemingly outmatched humans had turned the tables on physically superior opponents using various techniques or technologies that exploited neurological vulnerabilities. Most have been dismissed as exaggerations or isolated anomalies by KRYLL intelligence. But now, having experienced such capability firsthand, Kael'thrak wondered what other misconceptions might be clouding KRYLL strategic assessments. His contemplation was interrupted by a priority communication. As he absorbed the information about the Void Reaver attack and the forming response team, his scaled lips curved into what might have been called a smile on a human face. "Interesting," he murmured to himself. "Most interesting indeed." The twisted path of his thoughts was interrupted by another chime, this one indicating an emergency briefing would commence in 30 minutes. All senior military personnel were required to attend, including both himself and, he noted with narrowed eyes, representatives from the Earth Defense Force. When the general arrived at the briefing room, his entrance caused an immediate hush to fall over the assembled officers. He noted with grim satisfaction the nervous glances and subtle shifts in posture. Good. Despite the incident with the human cadet, his reputation still commanded respect, or at least fear. His satisfaction dimmed considerably when he spotted Cadet Vance seated with the technical analysis team. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and Kael'thrak was infuriated to find no fear in her gaze, only the same composed attentiveness she'd shown before he'd struck her. The briefing itself was sobering. The Wanderer, a research vessel cataloging artifacts from a recently discovered ancient civilization, had been specifically targeted. According to the fragmented distress call, the Void Reavers had bypassed valuable conventional cargo in favor of a single sealed containment unit in the secure hold. "We believe they're after this," said the Xylosian security chief, activating a holographic projection. An oblong device of unfamiliar design rotated slowly above the briefing table. A computational relic recovered from the ruins on Ephraim 4. Initial analysis suggests it may contain data storage capabilities far beyond our current technology. Kael'thrak leaned forward, his interest piqued despite himself. "And if the Void Reavers obtain this device?" "Unknown," admitted the security chief. "But given their pattern of technological assimilation and their already formidable capabilities, Alliance Command considers recovery or destruction of the artifact to be the highest priority." As the briefing continued with tactical assessments and mission parameters, Kael'thrak found his attention repeatedly drawn to the human cadet. While others asked questions about firepower and shield capabilities, she remained silent, her focus on the technical data scrolling across her portable display. When she finally spoke, her question caught everyone by surprise. "Has anyone analyzed the energy signature of the Void Reaver's cloaking technology from previous encounters?" She tapped her display, sending information to the main briefing screen. "Because I'm seeing a pattern in the reported sensor ghosting that suggests a specific oscillation frequency." The room fell silent as technical officers scrambled to verify her observation. Kael'thrak found himself begrudgingly impressed by both the insight and the confidence with which it was delivered. "Cadet Vance may be onto something," confirmed a Zorian sensor specialist after several tense moments. "If this oscillation pattern holds true, we might be able to calibrate our sensors to detect their ships even when cloaked." Commander Rostova gave Alera a subtle nod of approval before addressing the room. "We'll need to integrate this approach into our tactical planning. General Kael'thrak, as the senior military officer present, your input on the assault strategy will be crucial." All eyes turned to the KRYLL general, placing him in an unexpected position. His instinct was to dismiss the human's contribution out of hand, but doing so would make him appear petty and potentially jeopardize the mission. More importantly, his tactical mind recognized the value of the insight, regardless of its source. "Incorporate Cadet Vance's analysis into the sensor arrays," he said after a calculated pause. "But we should prepare for the possibility that the Void Reavers have altered their technology since previous encounters." He then outlined a conventional KRYLL assault strategy, overwhelming force directed at the most likely points of enemy concentration. It was an approach that had served the KRYLL military well for generations. When he finished, he noticed Alara studying her display with an intensity that suggested disagreement. His pride flared, but curiosity won out. "You have an alternative suggestion, Cadet?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. Alara looked up, momentarily surprised at being directly addressed by the general. She hesitated, glancing at Commander Rostova, who gave her a slight nod. "With respect, General," she began, choosing her words with evident care, "conventional assault patterns have proven largely ineffective against Void Reavers in previous encounters. Their command structure doesn't follow predictable hierarchies, and their defensive deployments adapt rapidly to direct pressure." She stood and approached the tactical display, manipulating the holographic representation of the Wanderer and its likely boarding points. "Instead of concentrating our force, I suggest a scattered approach using small, diverse teams. Multiple entry points, minimal communication to avoid detection, and specific technical objectives rather than territorial control." Kael'thrak's first instinct was to bristle at the challenge to his authority, particularly from the very human who had humiliated him. But the tactical merits of her proposal were difficult to dismiss. "You suggest we abandon proven military doctrine in favor of, what, infiltration teams?" he asked, more curious than confrontational. "Not abandon, sir. Adapt." Alara highlighted various points on the ship's schematic. "The Void Reaver's advantage has always been their unpredictability and technological edge. I'm suggesting we mirror that approach, becoming the unpredictable element ourselves." A tense silence fell over the briefing room as all eyes turned to Kael'thrak, waiting for his response. The general studied the tactical display, his mind weighing centuries of KRYLL military tradition against the unorthodox but potentially effective approach suggested by the human cadet. "A hybrid approach," he finally declared. "Two primary assault teams to draw attention and resources, creating openings for three smaller infiltration teams with specific objectives." He looked directly at Alara. "An adaptation, as you suggested, Cadet." The shock in the room was palpable. Kael'thrak, known for his rigid adherence to KRYLL military doctrine, had not only incorporated a human's tactical suggestion, but had acknowledged its merit publicly. "Commander Rostova," he continued, "I assume you'll want Cadet Vance on one of the technical teams, given her insights." Rostova nodded, maintaining a professional demeanor despite her obvious surprise at the general's cooperative stance. "Yes, her expertise would be valuable." "Then she will join my personal infiltration team," Kael'thrak announced, causing another ripple of surprise through the assembled officers. "If her theories about Void Reaver technology prove correct, I want that advantage directly at hand." Alara's composure faltered momentarily, genuine surprise crossing her features before she regained control. "As you wish, General." As the briefing concluded and officers dispersed to prepare for the mission, Kael'thrak approached Alara, his towering form once again casting her in shadow. But this time, his posture lacked the aggressive dominance of their previous encounter. "I still owe you pain for your actions, human," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "But for now, we have a common enemy, and I prefer to keep potential threats where I can see them." Alara met his gaze steadily. "Understood, General. Though I would point out that if we're successful, we'll have proven that former adversaries can become effective allies when circumstances require it." Kael'thrak made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. "Always teaching lessons, aren't you, Cadet? Save your insights for the Void Reavers. They'll need the education more than I do." As he walked away, Kael'thrak found himself in the unfamiliar position of reevaluating a core belief. Perhaps there was more to humans than he had been willing to acknowledge. The mission ahead would put that possibility to the test, along with their chances of survival. The assault team's transport cut through the void, its engines pushed to maximum as it approached the last known coordinates of the Wanderer. In the dimly lit tactical compartment, the infiltration teams made final preparations in tense silence. Alara checked her equipment for the third time, acutely aware of General Kael'thrak watching her from across the compartment. Their team was small but diverse, Herself, the general, a Zorian pilot named Tars with exceptional reflexes, and a quiet Zalosian communications specialist called Nairi. Final approach in 3 minutes, came the pilot's voice over the comm. No sign of Void Reaver vessels on conventional scans. Alara activated her modified scanner, the device humming softly as it searched for the specific oscillation pattern she had identified. For several long moments, nothing appeared on the display. Your theory seems to be falling short, Cadet, Kael'thrak observed, though his tone lacked the mockery she might have expected. Then the scanner chimed, a faint signal appearing at the edge of its range. Contact, Alara announced, transferring the data to the main tactical system. 2 vessels, holding position on the far side of the Wanderer. They're cloaked, but definitely there. The general studied the readings, then nodded with grudging respect. It seems I owe you an apology, Cadet. Your insight may have just prevented us from flying directly into an ambush. The transport's commander adjusted their approach vector, bringing them toward the Wanderer from a blind spot relative to the detected Reaver ships. As they drew closer, the research vessel came into view through the transport's observation ports, a sleek, elongated craft designed for scientific exploration rather than combat. No visible hull damage, Tars noted, his reptilian eyes narrowing. They didn't blast their way in. The Reavers rarely do, Alara replied, studying the ship's exterior. They prefer precision over destruction when acquisition is their goal. Kael'thrak moved to stand beside her, his massive frame dwarfing hers. You seem well informed about their tactics. I wrote my academy thesis on their attack patterns, she explained. They're not mindless pirates. There's method in everything they do. The transport executed a silent docking procedure, an emergency airlock located far from the Wanderer's main entry points. As the teams prepared to board, Commander Rostova delivered final instructions from the command vessel holding position at a safe distance. Alpha and Beta teams will create diversions at the main cargo bay and engineering sections, she explained. Meanwhile, infiltration teams will proceed to their designated objectives. General Kael'thrak's team will attempt to secure or neutralize the artifact. Remember, if recovery isn't possible, destruction is authorized. As the airlock cycled and the teams separated, Alara felt the weight of the mission settle over her. The corridors of the Wanderer were eerily quiet, emergency lighting casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of the team's cautious progress. Life support functioning at minimal levels, Nairi reported quietly, monitoring a handheld environmental scanner. No life signs detected in this section. Where's the crew? Tars wondered aloud, his hand resting on his sidearm. Either hiding, captured, or dead, Kael'thrak replied bluntly. Focus on the mission, not on questions we can't answer yet. They moved deeper into the ship, following Alara's scanner as it tracked energy signatures similar to those emanating from the artifact. The occasional distant sound of movement kept them on edge, but they encountered no resistance. This is too easy, the general muttered as they approached the secure research section. The Reavers must know we're here by now. Maybe that's the point, Alara suggested, studying her readings with increasing concern. General, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures matching the artifact now. They weren't there before. Kael'thrak frowned, meaning either my scanner is malfunctioning or... She paused, a realization dawning. They're replicating the signature somehow, creating decoys. No sooner had she spoken than alarms blared throughout the ship, and the sounds of distant weapons fire echoed from the direction of the diversion teams. The assault has begun, Kael'thrak noted grimly. We need to move faster. They hurried through the increasingly maze-like corridors of the research section, following the strongest of the artifact signatures. Rounding a corner, they encountered their first Void Reaver, a figure encased in sleek, black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its helmet revealed no features, only a smooth, featureless faceplate that gave no hint of the species beneath. Kael'thrak reacted with lightning speed despite his size, firing a precision shot that caught the Reaver in what should have been a vulnerable joint in the armor. The figure staggered but didn't fall, returning fire with a weapon that emitted no visible energy but caused the bulkhead beside the general to warp and buckle. Tars and Nairi provided covering fire as Alara analyzed the enemy's armor with her scanner. "Aim for the left side of the chest plate," she called out. "There's a power fluctuation in the defensive field there." The general adjusted his aim and fired again. This time, the Reaver collapsed, its armor emitting a high-pitched whine before going dark. "How did you know?" Kael'thrak demanded as they moved past the fallen enemy. "Their armor uses the same oscillating frequency as their ships," Alara explained hurriedly. "It creates weak points that shift predictably if you know the pattern." The general gave her an appraising look. "Your grandmother taught you this as well?" Despite the tension of the moment, Alara allowed herself a small smile. "No, General. That was standard EDF tactical analysis." They continued deeper into the ship, encountering and dispatching more Reavers using Alara's insights. The team operated with increasing efficiency, each member adapting to the other's strengths with surprising speed. Finally, they reached the secure containment area. Through the reinforced viewport, they could see the artifact, the oblong device from the briefing, suspended in a field of energy. Around it worked 3 Void Reavers, their movements precise and coordinated as they interfaced with the containment systems. "They haven't extracted it yet," Tars observed. "We still have a chance." Kael'thrak assessed the situation with a tactical eye. Direct confrontation in an enclosed space with the artifact present is too risky. "We need another approach." All eyes turned to Alara, who studied the scene intently. "The containment field is generating its own defense against tampering," she noted. "That's why they haven't simply taken it. They're trying to disable the field without triggering what appears to be a fail-safe mechanism." "Can you use that?" the general asked. Alara nodded slowly. "If I can access the control system from a secondary terminal, I might be able to trigger a controlled overload of the containment field. Not enough to destroy the artifact, but enough to temporarily incapacitate anyone in the immediate vicinity." "Do it," Kael'thrak ordered. "We'll create a distraction to keep their attention focused on the main entrance." As the team split up, Alara made her way to an auxiliary research terminal. Her fingers flew across the unfamiliar interface, deciphering the security protocols through a combination of training and intuition. Meanwhile, Kael'thrak, Tars, and Nairi positioned themselves for the assault. "In position," Alara reported through the comm. "On your mark, General." "Execute," came the terse reply. Alara initiated the containment field modification, causing alarms to blare inside the secure room. As expected, the Reavers turned their attention to the field, frantically working to stabilize it. At that moment, Kael'thrak and the others burst through the main entrance, weapons ready. The ensuing firefight was brief but intense. The Reavers, caught between defending against the armed intrusion and preventing the containment field collapse, divided their attention. It was all the advantage the team needed. "Field destabilization at critical levels," Alara warned. "Brace for electromagnetic pulse in 3, 2, 1. A wave of energy erupted from the containment unit, washing over the room. The Reaver's armor systems flickered and failed, leaving them momentarily vulnerable. Kael'thrak and Tars moved in with practiced efficiency, neutralizing 2 of them in quick succession. The third Reaver, however, managed to activate some kind of personal shield just before the pulse hit. It turned toward the artifact, raising a device that pulsed with ominous energy. "It's going to destroy the artifact," Nairi called out in alarm. Without hesitation, Alara rushed from her position at the terminal, crossing the room in a sprint that caught everyone by surprise. She threw herself between the Reaver and the containment field, her body intercepting the energy beam meant for the artifact. The impact threw her against the containment pedestal, her body absorbing energy that rippled visibly across her form. The Reaver advanced, adjusting its weapon for another shot. What happened next would later be described in conflicting accounts, each witness seeing something slightly different. What was clear was that General Kael'thrak, with a roar of fury that seemed to shake the very walls, charged the Reaver with unexpected speed. Instead of firing his weapon, the general engaged in hand-to-hand combat, his massive form grappling with the armored figure. The Reaver's advanced technology gave it an edge, but Kael'thrak fought with a savagery born of millennia of KRYLL evolutionary development as apex predators. The containment field is collapsing. Nairi warned, monitoring the systems. We have minutes at most. Tars moved to help Alara, who was struggling to her feet despite the energy blast she'd absorbed. Can you walk? Help the general, she gasped, pushing him away. I can handle the artifact. Across the room, Kael'thrak was locked in a deadly struggle with the Reaver. Despite his strength and combat experience, the general was gradually being forced back by the enemy's enhanced capabilities. The moment Alara reached the artifact, everything changed. As her hands touched the containment field, the energy that had been coursing through her body since being struck by the Reaver weapon seemed to react with the field itself. The artifact pulsed with sudden brilliance, and a surge of information flooded her consciousness. Glimpses of technology and knowledge from the ancient civilization that had created it. In that moment of connection, she understood not only what the artifact was, but why the Void Reavers wanted it so desperately. General, she called out, her voice stronger now. The artifact is a key, a control mechanism for a network of automated defense systems left by the ancients. The Reavers want to weaponize it. The knowledge gave Kael'thrak renewed purpose. With a technique that seemed borrowed from Alara's own demonstration days earlier, he found a vulnerability in the Reaver's armor and exploited it ruthlessly. The enemy fighter collapsed, its systems failing catastrophically. We need to move, the general ordered, breathing heavily from the exertion. This entire section will destabilize when the containment field fails completely. Alara carefully removed the artifact from its housing, the device now dormant in her hands. It's safe to transport now. It seems to have reconfigured itself somehow. As they made their way back through the ship, they received updates from the other teams. The diversion had been costly. Several Alliance personnel had been injured or killed, but they had successfully drawn the majority of the Reaver forces away from the artifact. When they finally reached the extraction point, they found Commander Rostova waiting with a medical team. Mission accomplished, Kael'thrak reported formally, though his usual military bearing was somewhat diminished by the battle damage to his armor and the unexpected respect in his voice as he added, largely thanks to Cadet Vance's actions. As medical personnel attended to Alara's injuries, Rostova studied the artifact now secured in a portable containment unit. Was it worth the cost? She asked quietly. More than you know, Alara replied, wincing as a medic treated her burns. It contains navigational data to an entire network of ancient technologies. In the wrong hands, it could have changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The journey back to Xylo's station was subdued, the victory tempered by the losses sustained. Alara spent much of the time in the medical bay, recovering from her injuries and trying to process the fragments of information the artifact had imprinted on her mind during their brief connection. She was surprised when General Kael'thrak visited her there, his imposing frame somehow less threatening than it had been just days earlier. The medical officer tells me you'll make a full recovery, he said without preamble. Good. Your actions aboard the Wanderer were commendable. Alara regarded him curiously. That almost sounds like a compliment, General. Take it however you wish, Cadet. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly unaccustomed to such conversations. I have served the KRYL Empire for many cycles, always certain of our inherent superiority. Recent events have challenged that certainty. Is that why you came here? To tell me humans aren't as inferior as you thought? Kael'thrak made a sound that might have been a laugh. Partly, but also to inform you that I have withdrawn the formal complaint against you regarding our first encounter, and to ask a question. What question is that? The technique you used on me, he said, unconsciously rubbing the spot on his neck where her fingers had pressed. Could you teach it to my soldiers? Alara couldn't hide her surprise. You want me to train KRYL warriors in human defensive techniques? I want my forces to be prepared for all possible threats, he replied pragmatically, including those that might employ such techniques against us in the future. She considered the request, recognizing it for what it was, not just a tactical decision, but a profound shift in the general's worldview. I would be honored, General, though I suggest we frame it as a cultural exchange rather than combat training. It might be more diplomatically palatable. Always the teacher, he observed with what might have been the KRYLL equivalent of a smile. Very well. A cultural exchange it shall be. 1 month later, Alara stood before a mixed class of cadets from various species, including several KRYLL, in a training room on Xylo Station. General Kael'thrak observed from the back, his presence lending official sanction to what had become a popular addition to the station's training curriculum. Defensive techniques are not about raw strength, she explained, demonstrating a move with a Zorian volunteer. They're about understanding vulnerabilities, both your opponent's and your own, and turning them to your advantage. As the class practiced the techniques under her guidance, Commander Rostova entered quietly and joined Kael'thrak in observation. Your idea is proving remarkably successful, she noted. Applications for the cultural exchange program have tripled since you endorsed it. The general nodded, watching as Alara patiently corrected a young KRYLL officer's stance. It seemed the logical response to recent events. The galaxy is changing, Commander. Those who cannot adapt will find themselves at a disadvantage. A surprisingly progressive view from a traditionalist like yourself. Kael'thrak's gaze remained on Alara as she effortlessly redirected an attack from an opponent twice her size. I was recently provided with a rather painful but effective demonstration of the cost of rigid thinking. I prefer not to repeat the experience. Rostova smiled knowingly. And the artifact? Has your government accepted the Alliance's proposal for joint research? Reluctantly, yes. The KRYLL High Command was persuaded by my report on the potential consequences of allowing any single species to control such technology. He straightened his posture, the movement drawing Alara's attention momentarily from across the room. She offered a small nod of acknowledgement, which he returned with equal subtlety. Sometimes, the general mused, the most effective lessons come from unexpected sources. In the center of the training floor, Alara demonstrated another technique, her movements fluid and precise. Around her, cadets of a dozen different species watched attentively, the boundaries between them temporarily dissolved by shared learning. It was a small beginning, perhaps, one class, one station, one artifact recovered. But in the vast expanse of the galaxy, even small beginnings could create ripples that eventually became waves, changing the course of history in ways that no one, not even a proud KRYLL general or a determined human cadet, could fully predict. And as Alara caught Kael'thrak's eye once more across the training room, she saw something there that hadn't existed before there. Shared ordeal, something that transcended mere respect or professional courtesy. Understanding. For species that had evolved on different worlds, under different suns, shaped by different evolutionary pressures, true understanding was perhaps the rarest and most valuable achievement of all, more powerful than any ancient artifact, more enduring than any empire. It was, Alara reflected as she turned back to her students, a promising foundation upon which to build a future.